Hello. Hello, friends. My internet's been real spotty for a few days. So hopefully we got this. Hello, welcome to the Friday stream. I am your hostess, Lisa. Happy birthday to Radical Ramblings. You're the big 3-5. Welcome to your mid-30s. So exciting. My hair looks gorgeous. Thank you. Because it's actually super dirty. I have not had hot water. We have not had hot water at our house in 3 months. It was supposed to be getting fixed this week, and I've been just showering at the pool, and it's been quite a few days. So thank you for saying that. It's actually very dirty, but thank you. So yes, it's so nice to see you all. Wishing Radical a happy birthday in the chat. It's great to see all of you. Tori, Hazel, KP, Marie, Ice Goddess, Expired Milk, Hannah, Susie. Everybody's here on time. I love that. Love it. The thumbnail is so unsettling. Yeah, we might look at a little slideshow later of photos of dads with their daughters celebrating purity culture. Expired Milk says, if 30 is the wall, then 35 is, I don't know, the extra wall, the razor wire, the concertina wire. Okay. So, welcome to the Friday stream. I'm Lisa, your hostess. We're here in Grandma's Basement once again, week 2 of the Grandma's Basement series. We're talking about purity culture today. We got a nice little blog article for you. This topic was suggested by Melissa Dawson, so I wanted to thank her for the topic. Remember, guys, anybody can suggest a topic anytime, and I will do my best to accommodate. I love it when you suggest topics, and I hunted down this article myself. If you got an article you'd like me to read, always feel free to send it along. Best way to contact me is any of the comment sections on any of my videos because I see all the comments all the time. So today's article or blog post that we're reading, like KP says, because dads own their daughters' vaginas until their husbands do, no surprise, there's tons of molestation in religious households. Yeah, we're talking about purity culture. I actually read a book about purity culture not that long ago. And I found in trying to find an article to read together, I discovered this blog post from something called the Cedarville Interpreter, which is a blog from Cedarville University, which is a ultra Christian conservative university in Ohio. So I'm like, what better perspective than someone who goes to a Christian university to write a blog post on why this is toxic? And also, this is written by an anonymous, presumably student there, a female. And I can understand why someone would want to remain anonymous in talking about this topic within their own culture. Expired Milk says, I watched a documentary about this once. Purity balls were something else. So yes, the thumbnail picture is from a dad and a daughter attending a purity ball. And I do have a slideshow to show you more pictures like that if we need to see that, but they're pretty creepy for real. So let's get into this article. Why purity culture is toxic, a female perspective. This article was written by a female and will be followed by an article from a male perspective about purity culture. But as far as I can tell, this is the last article that appeared on this blog. So Interesting. Definitely didn't get the male perspective. My experience with purity culture. This past summer, I watched a horror movie on Hulu titled Pure. It is the story of two girls and their father at a retreat focused on dads and daughters spending time together and learning about the importance of sexual purity, as well as participating in a purity ball. At these purity balls, daughters are encouraged to pledge abstinence until marriage by giving this special gift of abstinence to their fathers to keep until they are married. So, right off the bat, that's pretty creepy. Why are you concerned about your daughter's sexuality when she's still essentially a child? Weird. Weird. Especially disturbing was the scene where Pastor Seth, the leader of the retreat, likens girls who aren't virgins to chewed up pieces of gum. I've heard that before. I've also heard um, taking the wrapper off a lollipop and every boy gets a lick of the lollipop. Who would want to lick that lollipop after somebody else did? Um, you wouldn't want to put that in your mouth. As if a girl or a woman can be used up. That's kind of a common misogynistic trope, the idea that you're like a single use thing. Again, it all comes back to objectification. Like every single thing we talk about comes back to objectification. Um, yeah, like Hazel says, yay, girls equals objects. In the movie, Pastor Seth refers to the chewed up gum as unwanted. Nobody wants that because it's been used. It is a requirement of God that you remain untouched. It's so interesting to me. I am de facto an atheist. I don't use that term to describe myself, but I don't believe in a God. Um, so whenever I read something else, I'm like, yes, this thing that you made up. Right, I do that's my personal belief. God is a made up, contrived thing that people came up with. So, cool. It's a requirement of this made up thing that you remain untouched. Expired Milk says, I do wonder if any value is assigned to the mother daughter relationship in this type of environment besides servant and servant trainee. Maybe not. I think a lot of grooming is passed down through females. This movie was eerie yet disturbingly familiar. The messages of this movie reminded me of pieces of my childhood, along with what those around me have been taught, both growing up and at Cedarville. Again, we're reading this blog from this university that's a Christian university in Ohio. So that's the reference to Cedarville there. And the caption from this, still from this movie, Pure on Hulu, is a disturbing yet familiar depiction of what purity culture can look like. I'm assuming that's the dad with the daughter. Interesting mixed race. I mean, not like it can't happen, but interesting depiction. Growing up, I was taught that I needed to keep my special gift. Again, objectification. Notice it everywhere. Notice it every time you see it. Um, that your body is a gift. Well, that's kind of turning in your body into an object, right? To keep my special gift for my husband on our wedding night. Also, this idea that you can give yourself up. You're giving yourself to another person. You don't belong to yourself, you belong to them now. Of course, the special gift was the most sacred thing a good Christian girl can give to her husband, her virginity. It was, of course, assumed that I would eventually get married. Right, so that's an interesting aspect of this too. It was assumed that I would eventually get married. Doesn't leave a lot of room for exploring other lifestyles, maybe one where you never get married, maybe one where you're a lesbian. You're not gonna be in the kind of marriage they're expecting, right? The gift for my husband, well, what if there never is a husband? Some of the books I read growing up, including The Princess and the Kiss by Jenny Bishop, which explained to young girls how they needed to save their kiss. They used this kiss as a metaphor for virginity for their future prince. And there are even fundamentalist Christian women who save even touching, even holding hands, and even kissing for after they're married, which is really, really, really like a orthodox fundamentalist kind of view of things. Right. Well, I guess this is the heart of it. So KP says, if it's true that a girl is ruined by premarital sex, then morally speaking, shouldn't all males refuse to have sex with someone until they are married to her? Again, the focus is always on the female to retain her purity. Where is the purity ball with the mom and the son? Also creepy, but you know what I mean? Like, where is the emphasis on the son? There is none. He's supposed to be out doing whatever he wants. Meanwhile, like, it takes 2 to tango, you know? Radical says, "I remember in the Duggar family, once engaged, you could now hug or hold hands, but that's it." Okay. Such a creepy topic. In return, they would be rewarded with many blessings. Girls were told to reject men who simply weren't good enough for their sacred gift and to allow only their future prince to have it. The prince princess kind of language too is very weird. Um, it's fantastical. It's like a fairy tale or something. It's adds to the creepiness for sure. They were to protect this kiss at all costs, as well as to let their parents or the king and queen help them protect it. I also worked through the workbook that came separately and encouraged self reflection and discussion with parents. Now, self reflection, good, perhaps not in this specific context. Discussion with parents, also good. But can those things be twisted to be bad? Yes. And, in thinking about this topic and what I wanted to say on it and stuff, like like many things or several things, as a radical feminist, coming to this topic of what is essentially celibacy in young women is I actually don't have that different of opinion fundamentally than these people, but we come at it from totally opposite spectrum. I think celibacy is great for different reasons than they think celibacy is great. I don't think it's great, you know, to objectify women and to say that you have this special gift and you're gonna be used up if you give it to somebody or whatever. But hey, existential. I see you. Um, but I think celibacy is great because you don't have to worry about pregnancy, you don't have to worry about STDs, and you don't have to worry about regret, you don't have to worry about getting into situations maybe where you're coerced to do things that you don't want. Not victim blaming, just saying, you know, it's not inherently bad to be celibate. I think the liberal feminist view that promotes sex positivity can also be extremely damaging to women, almost to the magnitude that this stuff can be damaging to young women. 15th, Jessica says the prince princess imagery is interesting when traditionally royal marriages were more like business arrangements. Yes, and there's definitely an element of property exchange here. Like the father owns this property, it has a value. He doesn't want the value to be degraded or depreciated by the daughter giving up her kiss to some other man who's not her husband. So, you know, she belongs to him and she is his to give away. We still use that language even in non-conservative, non-Christian, liberal people still have weddings where the father gives away the daughter. Feminists, I'm sure, still have weddings. Women who would call themselves feminists would still have a wedding and her father gives her away. So why are we doing that? Why are we taking husbands' names and those things that denote that we are objects and we are property of men? Hazel says the libfem view is to please men at all costs, so being celibate doesn't line up with that one. Agreed, and I have a video about why sex positivity is harmful to women, and, you could call me sex negative, that's totally fine, doesn't bother me at all. Lil Meow says DIY is more efficient than 99% of men anyways. Getting at the truth there. Tori says also the taking of the last name or even hyphenating the name when men are never expected to do that. Of course, so we're always looking for those things where women are expected to act in one way that men are not expected to act. This purity culture is a perfect example of that double standard, one standard for girls and women, one standard for boys and men. So here's the cover of The Princess and the Kiss by Jenny Bishop, a book written about sexual purity for young girls. Again, God's gift of purity. So there you have it. I also read the book Before You Meet Prince Charming. Again, Prince imagery used there. A Guide to Radiant Purity. So again, there's a difference between celibacy and purity, I think. You know, like I'm saying, celibacy be good for lots and lots and lots of reasons, and I would definitely encourage other women to choose that path if it works for you. But purity changes the color of it quite a lot. Existential Gamer kept her name. Good for you. I also read the book Before You Meet Prince Charming, A Guide to Radiant Purity by Sarah Malley, a conservative fundamentalist, with my dad, Burr. This book had some very concerning messages. Foremost among these messages was that modern dating was forbidden and that God will quite literally send you a prince in the form of a godly young man. Again, this stuff is kind of funny to read as a person who doesn't believe in God. It feels very mythological and very wishful thinking or something like, yeah. I'd like to make a side note here that Vision Forum, the organization headed by Doug Phillips, a proponent of Christian patriarchalism, sold this book. Doug Phillips had an affair and his organization shut down to his sexual grooming of an underage girl. Are we surprised? So, yeah. So here is the classic knight in shining armor promised Christian girls a happy ending. before you meet Prince Charming. Ice Goddess says, I was a blind sheep as a Catholic, but something always felt off, like it was boring and I didn't get why I had to go. Love you arguing about the religious stuff. So, yeah, and my background personally is I grew up as a super Christian. I went to Bible camp. I was in the church choir. I went to Bible study. I was in youth group. I did all that kind of stuff. So I grew up in the church, a progressive church. I had a female pastor. I grew up as an Episcopal. It's something I'd like to talk more about, like how I got from there to where I am now, how I feel about it. I basically feel more or less pretty good about my upbringing. I know a lot of people who grew up Christian um, resent their upbringing and stuff like that. That's not my experience at all. I think for me, it was a very, very positive experience. And it gave me the perspective. It gave me like a place to grow from. And I grew into someone who is ultimately at this point probably most describe myself as an existentialist or something like that. A humanist, maybe. And I don't believe in anything extra, you know, extra sensory. I don't know. Anywho, but I'd like to do more of a video about that. Vlogust is coming up. I'm kind of thinking about doing a few more little personal videos and stuff. I don't know if that would be interesting to anybody. Existential says, I wonder what boys growing up this way need to read. Are they thinking of themselves as princes, or is the focus on what girls should be doing for them? 15th, Jessica says, I wonder if purity culture is a way to get older women/girls to have childlike purity as a PEDO adjacent thing, like a cultural puberty blocker. Interesting thought. Moon says, grew up in the Catholic Church, still shocked by some of the sex education we got. I will never forget my religion teacher in high school telling us masturbation is bad and makes you bad at sex. This book instructed young girls to keep their hearts protected at all costs, which included not obsessing over boys or even having lengthy conversations with them. Again, the radical feminist stance and the ultra conservative Christian stance. Are they that different? Like, this almost sounds to me like a little black pill feminism right here. Is like, don't talk to men, don't think about men. But again, coming from it from like extraordinarily different perspectives, but kind of meeting up at the same place. This book encouraged a Duggar-like courtship where a young man would first get to know the young lady's father. Again, very patriarchal, very property transfer. The first chapter of the book introduces a little cartoon with the words beneath it, to be rescued, one must first be a princess. To be rescued, to be helpless, to be in need, to be non-self-sufficient. Who wants to be rescued? Rescue yourself. Ms. Malley encouraged girls to wait for their spouse and secondly, allow their parents to be involved in her courtship process. There is nothing wrong with wanting your parents to be involved in approving your partner, especially if you were close to getting married. However, it is troubling that she felt the need to write, I don't have to date, flirt, or be searching for a husband. The Lord is more than able to arrange my marriage without my help. I agree. That is very troubling. The rescue thing is so deeply ingrained in so many, and I would even argue that it's ingrained in secular society too, right? Like those of us who grew up watching Disney movies, like my generation grew up watching Disney movies on repeat, like literally watching the same Disney movies every single day, watching movies after school and after preschool and stuff like that, literally on repeat. And they're all about marrying a guy at the end and the sort of helplessness that happens in between and things you have to give up to be with the man. And he's like, usually in those movies, the man is just sort of there. He's not like an integral part of the story. He's just like the end goal. It's all about the woman's story, but there's just a guy at the end. You don't even get to know him. He's sort of like totally faceless and interchangeable with any other man, which is probably intentional. Men having their mothers waiting on them as children kind of teaches them that women are servile, says Lil Meow. Yeah, of course. Definitely. Mally fully expected God to drop her a husband out of the blue while doing jack squat, except for being involved in ministry, of course. Ms. Malley believed that there was no need to get to know a young man unless it was for the express purpose of marriage. This was the perspective of many young fundamentalist women who believed that a young man would fully pursue them by first gaining approval from her father without her necessarily expressing interest in that young man. This book presented the perspective that you must save yourselves for your future spouse and not give pieces of your heart away. Quite troubling is the message presented to young women that they will not be respected if they are at all physical with young men. Young men do not respect girls they can take advantage of, and they do not as easily take advantage of girls they respect. I mean, she could just end it here, right? Young men do not respect girls. Period. It's not really, like, conditional. Oh, they respect them in certain circumstances. If you do the right thing, you can press the right buttons and they'll respect you. Young men do not respect girls, so we can just leave it at that. Sarah Malley is now Sarah Hancock. She married her Prince Andrew, little unfortunate wording there, Prince Andrew, in 2020 at the age of 41. Yo, if she's 41 there, she's looking amazing. I'm not sure how old she is in that picture, but yeah. More troubling is the allegory in the book given about a girl being like a rose. According to the king or father in the book, a girl's beauty is damaged by physical handling. They are handled and played with by too many a fellow. Their heart is opened prematurely. Their heart is opened prematurely. The fragrance and beauty that was intended for the perfect time is lost or damaged forever. I'm just gonna leave a word here. Roasty. This is like incel kind of MRA talk, right? It's almost indistinguishable from that. The indication that those who are handled are damaged forever is disturbing and harmful to young girls. Totally agree. Malley also encourages young girls to avoid spending any time alone or having conversations with young men until they find the right one. Plot twist, at the time she wrote this book in her 30s, Sarah had still not found her prince. Even at the young age of 12 or 13, I remember thinking these standards were pretty unrealistic. I wondered how I would ever get married if I couldn't enjoy talking to people of the opposite sex or if I had to vanquish any thoughts of boys. I was also involved in Bright Lights, a program designed by Sarah Malley for young preteen and teen girls to guide them to be radiant in godliness, holiness, and testimony. This program focused on different topics to train young girls in the way of God's word, which included being strong for the Lord in your youth, developing a love for God's word, giving your heart to your parents, and making brothers and sisters best friends. This program also included the topic of purity, but I don't remember much about that topic aside from reading that crushes were bad and that I needed to guard my heart. Purity culture impacted my view of modesty and my body. I believed, as I was taught by my mother, that I was a stumbling block for men. So, this is like extremely common in fundamentalist religion of all different types that women are responsible for men's sin. Men aren't responsible for men's sin. Women are responsible for men's sin. And we even see this in the secular world that women are responsible for men's violence. Um, in the case of male MSers, often it's like, how was he raised? What was his relationship with his mother? She didn't do the MS, he did. Why is it coming back to her? Often the conversations do go that way. I believed I was the stumbling block for men. So women are always responsible for men's actions. Lil Meow, getting to the logic of God here. Why is God so concerned about all of this? Can't he put that energy towards, I don't know, solving horrific abuses and injustices? Logically doesn't make a lot of sense. Lily says, "Oh, yeah, totally. Also, women get blamed for husbands cheating on them. They didn't know how to keep a man." KP says a sort of victim blaming language here. Stumbling a block is a girl who deserved to be SA'd. She caused that man to sin. She's ruined. I read romance novels for a living. Crazy job. And I've just read I'm I'm actually working on 2 romance novels right now where, set in the 1800s, if the woman has sex before marriage, she's ruined and no man's gonna want her. Ruined. But men, they're just out there being sleazes. That my growing teenage body would distract boys, and that I shouldn't wear tight pants if I wanted to honor God. I also wore bathing suits that were essentially long dresses with leggings under them. My parents also openly shamed girls who were wearing bikinis. While shaming a woman for what she's wearing is never cool, I think personally there's nothing wrong with modesty if it's not forced on you. I do think we should be able to choose what we wear. I think, maybe the way that we present ourselves on social media and stuff like that, it can, I don't know. I have interesting feelings about it. Like, I don't think a woman's body is inherently sexual. Like, even a woman's naked body isn't inherently sexual. But maybe in a vacuum, that's true, but our society does view women in a certain way, and there are ways in which we can reinforce the idea that we're objects, and that's not good. It's not good for us. It's not good for women as a class, as a whole. It's not good for your sisters to promote that idea. So I think it's somewhat, you know, There's obviously a continuum between, say, posting a bikini pic and pornography, but, I have no problem with modesty if you choose modesty. I also have no problem in showing off your body in certain contexts. Again, I think context is really important. I was also forbidden from wearing form-fitting jeans along with high-heeled boots because they were too sexually provocative. Expired Milk says, I started wearing boys' clothes when I was very young and never stopped because I wanted things that were durable and not form fitting. My mom said covering up my body wouldn't stop boys. And that is very true. Women are objectified no matter what they wear in our world, not just in our Western society, but throughout the world. Women are objectified just as much wearing a burqa. You cannot win. So, really, my personal feeling is wear whatever you are most comfortable physically in. Hi, Scottus says we need to cover men's chests up. It's such a double standard. Bring back 20s bathing suits, bathing costumes. Moon Moon says, I feel like the showing off your sexy body part is just women having been groomed to view their bodies in objectifying ways as men do. We wouldn't do it if there were no men. That's very true. I think that's a great point. Carla says, agreed. Yeah, I think there's a performative self objectification, and then I think that there's just doing activities and clothing that's comfortable and appropriate for that activity. I This is something I wanted to talk about. I've been, I go to yoga like all the time, a yoga studio, and I've been going to that yoga studio for like 6 years or something, and mostly women don't just wear sports bras. But lately, I've noticed an uptick in women wearing sports bras and tights, and I kind of love it because it's like, first of all, we're in a room that's only other women. There'll be multiple of us just wearing sports bras and tights, and that's what we're comfortable moving in, and it's also just like, this is my body. These are women with different, body types. They're not all, like, super skinny yoga people or whatever, like, total range of body types, and I'm like, "This is actually amazing," practicing yoga with other women and, like, seeing their bodies because it's just something that we don't normally see a woman's body in this kind of not sexual way. So, that's something I've been, like, noticing and enjoying lately, and I don't think it's, like, problematic at all, you know? Moon Moon says, "I love yoga too, especially since it's usually all women in the classes, I feel much more comfortable too." Yeah. Lily says, "My clothing happens to be modest and more loose fitting because that's what makes me comfortable. I wear t-shirts to the gym because I wanna focus on my workout and not worry about my body." Carla says, "I would feel more comfortable dressing skimpy around women versus men." Yeah, and I've always felt, like, not self-conscious about, being naked in a locker room and stuff when there's other women around, like, I think it's actually feels very liberating, that's to me personally, and, like, it's something that I also don't feel the need to agree with other women on, like, if you have a different opinion on it, that's, like, totally fine. It's not, uh, something like I feel militant about, but it's nice to just feel kinda comfortable in your body because we're really pressured to feel uncomfortable in our body a lot of the time. So those moments where it's like, yeah, I actually feel good, I feel comfortable in my body, I'm around other women. I don't know. Ice Goddess says, "As long as the woman isn't my mom, then I would feel neutral. My mom makes me self-conscious." Moon Moon says, "I lived in Japan for a bit and loved going to the hot springs, just a bunch of naked women chilling together. The old ladies were spread eagle, they did not give a damn. It was great." Yeah, exactly. Zay Zay says, "Honestly, I wish only women could look at me. Wouldn't that be nice?" I agree. I agree. That would be just even imagining that, it gives me, like, a feeling. You know what I mean? Like, the idea that imagine if you could walk through the world and, like, without the male gaze, you know? It would be very, very, very liberating. We can do our best to scrub it out of our brain, but externally, at least, it's always gonna be there. My parents encouraged me to save my first kiss until marriage. I was in high school when I was deceitful with my parents and did not follow these instructions. I was grounded, removed from my relationship with that person, and told that I had been putting myself in a potentially dangerous situation. Well, lying is not really good, not a great thing, but that seems like a bit of an overreact. Because this is sort of like natural stuff, like kissing somebody in high school, and it's not dangerous. This is, you know, arguable. Not dangerous in the way that they're saying. Sure, yeah, I guess any contact with any man is dangerous. As a teenager, I was very upset when this young man I had been seeing, who attended an extremely fundamentalist university that is much more conservative than Cedarville, wrote a letter apologizing to my father for how he had taken advantage of me in a fully consensual encounter, by the way, and betrayed my father's trust. After this experience, my parents suggested that I read I Kissed Dating Goodbye by Joshua Harris. That is a real famous, purity book that I am familiar with. I know that many Cedarville students have experienced similar experiences with purity culture, where we were told growing up to abstain from any form of sexual thought, action, or intimate moment, including kissing until marriage. To this day, my parents praise people I know who have saved their first kiss till marriage as if they are morally superior to those who have not. That's kind of ugh, it is it's gross. Gross to me. It just gives me a gross feeling. The history of purity culture. I recently began to ask myself, what exactly is purity culture and where did it come from? Modern purity culture, or the purity movement that focuses on modesty, courting, and sexual purity, aka abstinence, until oh, I just, like, totally spaced out for a second. I'm gonna reread that. Modern purity culture, or the purity movement, is the American conservative Christian fundamentalist movement that focuses on modesty, courting, and sexual purity, aka abstinence until marriage. The focus of the purity movement is on young women, although men are certainly affected by it as well. Of course, women have been told to stay pure for their husbands for centuries, but modern evangelicals have been promoting and idolizing this message more and more in recent years. Purity culture has its modern roots in the late 1980s. Interestingly, it did not begin as a female focused movement. The Christian Sex Education Project, coordinated by Jimmy Hester, began in 1987. In 1992, True Love Waits, a theme developed by Richard Ross, was presented to Lifeway Christian Resources Management for the consideration as part of the Christian Sex Education Plan. In 1993, a youth group at a Baptist church in Tennessee signed the first True Love Waits commitment cards, pledging abstinence until marriage. By June of that same year, they reached their goal of 100,000 signed commitment cards and presented these to messengers of the Southern Baptist Convention, Houston, Texas. The True Love Waits movement didn't really seem to propagate any harmful messages because it focused on individual young people making their own personal choice to commit to purity without the pressure of their parents. However, this movement could be deemed the beginning of purity culture. Now, I wasn't really exposed to this, but I definitely, well, I don't know how personal I need to get, but um, I was very into the idea of waiting until marriage, as was my high school boyfriend. So we had a real chaste relationship, which I don't regret. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. But I think definitely growing up in the 90s, even if you were not an evangelical Christian, if you like my high school boyfriend was Catholic, I think we all kind of got these messages that this was the way to go. Also, I will say growing up in the era of AIDS, like, was definitely impactful. I don't really remember getting much, like, sex education in school. I went to public school, but I do remember even as young as 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade in the late '80s, early '90s, being very tuned in. Yes, like even at 7, 8, 9 years old, being very tuned into what was happening with AIDS and how, uh, basically, if you have sex, you're gonna die. So as a germaphobe and health, uh, what's the word for that? Kind of obsessed with my health and stuff like that. That really did kind of, a number on me mentally with regard to, thinking about sex, which is not, again, I don't really have any, like, huge qualms with how I grew up. It is what it is, and I've heard of other people in my generation, my specific age range, had, like, a similar experience with associating sex with death very strongly because of growing up in the midst of AIDS. Um, and, as a kid, like, we took a field trip to see the AIDS quilt and stuff like that. Like, it was something that was, like, in the news every night, it was just all around, and you got it from having sex, and the only way to not get it was abstinence. So, it was just so drilled into us in that generation, that little micro generation that I'm part of. So Wicked Queen says, everything you mentioned from this article about abstaining from sex and physical stuff till marriage and the ideas about modesty are positive things, in my opinion, as long as they apply to both sexes. And I totally agree. Lil Meow says, sex ed in the 90s was half-assed anatomy, very clinical, at least in Cali. KP says, I went to private school and was also homeschooled, no sex ed. A fundamentalist wrote a book on sex that women were only allowed to read within 3 months coming up to their wedding date. I've never, to this day, ever had any conversation with my parents. They never had the talk or anything like that, just 0. Again, to this day, never, ever, ever discussed in our household ever. I'm happy to keep it that way. Not something that I need to talk to my parents out. But I did have to find out a lot of stuff on my own, which it is what it is. Like, no, there was no one there to, like, give me any information, and I also was coming of age before the internet, which in some ways I'm sure was very good because I was not exposed to pornography till I was, like, in my late 20s or something. So that was not an equation, but yeah, I guess I had to kind of learn things on my own. Lil Meow says, "My mom was so paranoid when I hit puberty. She spent a lot of time telling me how tricky boys can be." Yeah, I never had any of those kinds of talks. My grandma threw a pamphlet at my mom when she was a kid about the menstrual cycle and refused to talk with her about it. No one ever even talked to me about my period. I got my period when I was 14. I was still wearing, like, little girl underwear and, like, camisoles and stuff. I wasn't even wearing a bra. I was like, "What is happening to my body?" No, and I had 2 older sisters growing up too, and I still was just, like, not exposed to any of this stuff. I love this, Hazel. My mom pretty much got me pads and told me I can get pregnant now and to not do that. In the scholarly work "To Cover Our Daughters: A Modern Chastity Ritual in Evangelical America," Harmony Phillips writes, "Within 10 years, an estimated 1 million commitment cards had been signed and displayed at events and places including the National Mall, Georgia Dome, and the Golden Gate Bridge." The movement continued to gain momentum into the new millennium by offering events internationally, including Uganda, Australia, and the 2004 Summer Olympics in Greece. Wow. During this time, however, the movement received a facelift, which included a more active role by the parents of the youth, suggesting a more conservative move towards resembling Goddard's biblical courtship. So again, seeing how huge this movement was, even if you were not directly involved with it, like I'm saying, growing up in that generation, peripheral to it as a Christian, in America where AIDS was on the news every night, like I'm saying, it was kind of inescapable to not be exposed to this stuff. Bill Gothard, I don't know how you say it, is the founder of the fundamentalist organization IBLP, or Institute for Basic Life Principles. Sounds like a cult. I mean, could you, like, come up with a more cult name than Institute for Basic Life Principles? A group that the Duggars were connected with. Remember the infamous pedophile Josh Duggar? Bill Goddard argued for his so-called biblical courtship, which included moral purity or nothing physical before marriage. Bill Goddard sexually abused women who worked for him, so his actions speak for themselves. You can read more about IBLP courtship here. So a lot of people who are overly focused on this stuff, not all of them, but it's not uncommon that they are actual predators themselves. Gothard, thank you. Make that correction going forward. Lisa, you have to watch Shiny Happy People. I feel like we were talking about that a few weeks ago. Randy Wilson, who worked for James Dobson, founder of Focus on the Family, founded the Purity Ball in the late 1990s. These purity balls are extravagant events that involve little girls and young women dressing up in white dresses and pledging abstinence to their fathers. So it's kind of like a debutante ball or a quinceañera or something like that, or a bat mitzvah, but through a little bit of a funhouse mirror, maybe. It's essentially the same thing, right? It's acknowledging that the young woman has transitioned to this period where she is fertile now. And maybe in other cultures, it's about like, well, this is one step, like a debutante ball is like, okay, you're fertile now, time to try to find a husband. This is like, you're fertile now, gotta lock it down until you do find a husband. Very, very similar thematically. Many fathers then give the daughters purity rings, placing them on the daughter's left ring finger. And some daughters are given necklaces or bracelets with lockets that are locked into place. The key is kept by the father, to be given to the daughter's husband at the time of their marriage. So again, chastity belt, in other words. In her 2010 book, The Purity Myth, feminist writer Jessica Valenti reported that more than 1,400 purity balls were held in 2006. Ms. Valenti writes, the message is clear and direct. It's up to men to control young women's sexuality. And these men who are put in this protector role often double as predators, because who is watching the watchmen, right? Carla says, ew, the locket key thing is so creepy. I agree. Ice Goddess says, ugh, I'm cringing here. Oh, meow. How do they not see the inherent cringe? Expired Milk says, if I were a mother watching this go down, I'd get a divorce and call the cops and not be complicit in it, as a lot of the moms surely are. Existential says, how is this not seen as incestous? Hazel says the idea of a dad protecting his daughter has the potential to be so wholesome, but in practice, it is always so insidious. Purity balls are creepy rituals, not holding back there, that are a mix between a wedding and a prom-like ceremony. Look at those little girls too. Geez, like you really want to be talking about the sexuality of those girls. There's like 11-year-old girls or something. Why should their sexuality even be a conversation at that age? See you later, Ice Goddess. Purity balls are focused on daughters feeling special like a princess, along with submitting to the headship of their father. The purity ball community, using one aspect of a girl's identity, namely sexuality, is addressing a larger issue of societal concern, the place of women and men in social structure. The sexuality of the adolescent girl is one of the commodities controlled by the authority. First, it is withheld by the father, then it is handed to the husband who maintains control. So, kind of basic feminist praxis here, or theory, I should say, not praxis. Basic feminist theory here that the woman's sexuality is a commodity because she is herself an object, and it's controlled by the authority of a male. So basic inherent principle to patriarchy. Like, sir, why are you occupied with your 8-year-old Simon? Says Existential Gamer. Lil Meow says she wants to catch butterflies. Stop being a creep, Dad. Hazel says they should be reading Babysitter's Club, which was my favorite series growing up, and chasing bugs and stuff. Not being exposed to this, it's adding this sexualization, right, to children. Not right. A central point of purity culture is that sexuality is something that should be controlled. Very provocative sentence there. A central point of purity culture is that sexuality is something that should be controlled. Another premise of purity culture for girls is the idea of being a princess. As the books that I read growing up suggested and romanticized, girls were princesses who needed to stay pure for their prince. This begs the question, what if a girl never finds her prince? Purity rings were sometimes a part of and other times separate from the purity ball ritual. These purity rings were given to young girls and boys to be an indication of the promise they had made to save themselves for marriage. I remember begging my parents to give me one because some of my friends had them and they were popular at the time. Celebrities including Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, the Jonas Brothers, and Demi Lovato also wore purity rings at one time. Purity rings were a physical representation of one's commitment to abstinence. Again, abstinence not being inherently wrong, celibacy not being inherently wrong. In fact, they are positive in many ways. I would say that they're inherently positive, actually, but they can be applied in this way that treats women like property. So here is purity rings were extremely popular amongst Christians in the early 2000s and mid 2010s. Joshua Harris and his infamous book, I Kissed Dating Goodbye, written in 1997, was a massive part of the purity movement in the early 2000s. This book left a huge impact on many people. This book essentially discouraged relationships that are not headed directly into marriage, along with sex or any sort of physical intimacy outside of marriage. And we kind of accept that this is part of some cultures, right? What about arranged marriages and stuff? This would be really akin to an arranged marriage. Other religions, that is the most common way of getting married. So in the Middle East and Pakistan and India and Orthodox Judaism, that is sometimes you're meeting the night before you're getting married, even meeting the person. Maybe you've heard their name and know a few things about them, but this is really not that different from that. Except maybe you get to meet and get to know them without physically touching them. Harris saved his kiss with his wife until the altar. They are now divorced. I guess he's used goods now. He got used up like chewed gum. Since the writing and promotion of his book, he has apologized for how it may have hurt many people and has also stopped its publication. Well, good for him. It's never too late to recant damaging messages. Ballistic says, I was actually mad that my fiance asked my father for my hand. It's not his for him to give. Poor guy, though. He was just doing what he thought was right in tradition and hadn't thought about the meaning. Right. And I think that we stick to a lot of traditions without thinking about them. And it's always appropriate to inject critical thinking into literally everything or anything that we do. Lil Meow says, why is the man never the used up one? I heard that every time a man has sex, his penis shrinks by a millimeter. Right? Haven't you guys heard that? The part of the book that scarred me the most was the first chapter, which describes a bride being sadly disappointed to see all of her husband's ex-lovers lined up on their wedding day. Her soon-to-be husband explains that he has given a piece of his heart to each of these girls. It's science. They're girls from my past. They don't mean anything to me now, but I've given a part of my heart to each of them. I thought your heart was mine. She said, it is. He pleaded, everything that's left is yours. So this is actually interesting because I kind of actually have mixed feelings about this because I do feel like in my personal experience, every relationship I had with a man kind of ruined me a little bit more progressively for the next one until I was just like, I'm done. This is never going to get better. But in a way, it's kind of a net positive because I'm like, well, I'm smarter now. I had to learn the hard way, but I'm smarter. I went through all that. But I will say, like, the first guy that I was really like in love with and betrayed my trust and all of that stuff, it did ruin me for the next one. So I kind of like giving a piece of your heart to somebody. Well, like I get how that actually could be a bad thing from my own personal experience. I This cover too is like just so. This book had an impact on an entire generation of young Christians. I don't know, those of you who've had relationships with multiple men, like, do you think that, like, your earlier relationships had a negative impact on later relationships? Because that was definitely my experience. It was like, if I hadn't had my trust betrayed, like, I was never able to trust a man again in the same way that I had initially. So, I don't know. I don't know if anyone can relate to that experience, but that was definitely my experience, was like, I did give someone my whole heart and I trusted them totally, and they betrayed me, and then every subsequent relationship, I, like, held back. Like, I was like, "That could happen again, so I'm not gonna, like, go all in." And as a result, those relationships, like, were worse because I didn't, like, go all in. You know? Existential says, "My previous relationships only taught me more honesty about what I want and won't put up with." Well, I think that's definitely true. That's like the good, you know, that's like the best outcome. Lil Meow says, "It's only natural to be cautious after that." And I think that's, I've talked about this before, but I think that's like say like Andrew Tate or something. He's like, "Well, by the time a woman's 19, she's like too old and she's been used up and stuff." And it's like, no, you've learned to not trust men unconditionally the way that you did in like your earlier relationships. And so you're not going to like um let men get away with shit you would have put up with before you were smarter, and so men will actually target younger women and avoid older women, not because there's anything wrong with older women, like even physically or whatever, but because we're smarter and won't put up with stuff. I actually do not fully trust my Nigel because he's a man and I know their nature. So far, so good, but I won't be deluded. He could turn. I think that's very smart. I think that those of us who see, who have our eyes open, just cannot fully trust any man, you know? Um, 15th, Jessica says, "Used up at 19. My first relationship wasn't until 20." Yeah, I mean, and it also relates to that trope in fiction of the innocent woman, like, um, like where you have, a robot woman or something, who the Born Sexy Yesterday, I think is what they call it, is like you got a woman in a fully developed body, but she's never had a relationship with a man and she doesn't know anything about the world. And that's like kind of the optimal woman for a man, is because she doesn't know if a man's behaving badly and treating her badly because um she just doesn't know anything about men at all. Existential says, "God, I hate Born Sexy Yesterday." Yeah, there's a great video. I know probably some of you guys have seen it. It's a video analysis about that concept, but yeah, she's still learning. KP says, "Yeah, yep, like the Jonah Hill situation," which I talked with Radical on her channel the other day about that. She's 13 years younger, and he thought he could get her to stop modeling and surfing again. Yeah, that age difference is very conducive to an abusive type situation as well. This narrative tells us that anyone who has former partners, whether they were sexual partners or not, has given pieces of their heart away. And like I'm saying, at least in my N equals one anecdotal personal case, I actually do think that there's truth to this. I know it's like warped in this way that is really toxic, but I wonder if we can have a conversation about that being a real thing, um, in a way that's not toxic. I'm not really sure what that conversation would look like, but I feel like there's something there, you know? They seemingly have less love to give to their future spouse. This narrative is not only disturbing and inherently degrading, but also extremely untrue. I disagree. I think there's truth to it. You do not give pieces of yourself away in a relationship. That is, you do not have less of a heart afterward. You learn and you may get hurt, but you do not become less. Well, I agree, you don't become less, but you may be less able to, well, you are less in the sense that you're less innocent, less naive, um, maybe less trusting, and those are not all necessarily, like, good things. I don't know. I hope that someone out there is understanding what I'm saying, because I I hear her point, and I think there's a lot of truth to her point, but I also do feel like based on my own experience of, like, I just had my trust so betrayed that I would and could never go into a relationship with a man, um, ever, like, trusting that way again. And also, everything that I know, whatever, it's been so many years of learning this stuff. Yeah, it's like, I don't know even know if jaded is, like, the word that I would use to describe myself, just like yeah, Moon Moon says, "I'm the same, Lisa. I say I'm heterosexual, but not attracted to men, only my fantasies now." It's like the reality of it's so challenging and, like, it's not gonna be, I don't know, what you imagine or what you want. To be in a relationship where you can actually allow yourself to feel it, to trust him totally and know you actually can, that is a dream that's dashed. I just can't imagine it now at this point. Fantasy can't disappoint you. Existential says, "I consider jaded way better. It's not worse because I'd rather have my eyes open." Definitely would rather have my eyes open. I know that sometimes people are like, "Oh man, if only I could go back to before I knew all this stuff and, like, go through the world as a normie and not." I've said this too, Ballistic. This is the joke I made this too. Me being straight is proof we can't choose our sexuality. No hetero woman would choose to be a hetero woman, 100%. We all relate? Yep, okay. Cedarville's purity culture. So this is talking about this specific Cedarville University in Ohio, which is a Christian, pretty, conservative Christian university. I looked it up. It goes without saying that Cedarville subscribes to purity culture. Along with forbidding homosexuality and bisexuality, it forbids any kind of sexual impurity before marriage, including sexual acts leading up to the act of intercourse. Because Cedarville forbids sexual activity, imagine this is like the college you're going to. Ugh, God, it's so cringe. Many couples are rushed into marriages so they can express their sexuality. Well, that's definitely certainly a toxic aspect of this because you're a teenager or a young adult, you have urges that come from your genes wanting to multiply themselves or whatever, hormones, etc. And the only way that you can kiss somebody is to get married. Guess what? You're going to end up marrying someone and getting divorced a few years later. So that is absolutely a totally toxic aspect of this. We all know the feeling of opening Instagram and seeing multiple engagement posts in one weekend. Couples know that sex is promised to them in marriage. Therefore, marriage becomes more attractive. Purity culture pushes people to get married younger and have shorter engagements so they will stay pure for marriage. This is not to say getting married young is necessarily bad. However, couples who are rushing to become engaged after less than a year of dating may be subscribing to purity culture. Of course, this is not always the case. However, the rate of divorce may be higher for those who date for less than a year. Radical says Christian University's whole thing is ring by spring. First semester is for finding a husband and getting a ring by spring. Existential says, how the hell do you enforce that in college without being super draconian? Right? Expired Milk says, I wonder how the families of those in these schools feel about divorce. Right? See you later, Existential. One 2015 study in the journal Economic Inquiry, for example, found that couples who dated for 1 to 2 years were 20% less likely to later get a divorce than those who dated less than a year, and couples who dated for 3 years or longer were 39% less likely. Additionally, couples who marry under the age of 25 are much more likely to divorce than couples who are older, but not too old. 60% of couples married between 20 and 25 will end in divorce. That's a wild statistic right there. 60% married between 20 and 25 will end in divorce. Yikes. That's a big yikes. Radical says, I know someone who went to a hella Christian university and they had to keep their dorm doors wide open at all times, and each person had to have at least 1 foot on the floor. Wild. Lil Meow, bucking the odds here. I've been married 15 and a half years, married at 21. Outlier. Young marriages are encouraged and praised in Cedarville community. How does purity culture harm us? This is what we're interested in learning today. For women especially, virginity has become the easy answer, the morality quick fix. You can be vapid, stupid, and unethical, but so long as you've never had sex, you're good. That is moral girl. You're a good. That is moral girl, and therefore worthy of praise. So you can be vapid, stupid, and unethical. Yikes. Purity culture taught us that if we saved ourselves for marriage, everything would be wonderful, beautiful, and blessed by God. Purity culture promised us amazing sex if we saved ourselves wholly and completely till marriage. Man, I read a book. I can't remember what it was, but it was exactly about that. And it was by a male author who had a lot he was married to a woman, had been through this purity culture stuff, and he had a lot of problems in his sex life with his wife. Like, I don't remember specifically what the issues were, but he was like, "But hey, wait, my pastor told me that we were gonna have this amazing sex life." Like, that's another big aspect of this that's, like, promised to them, that if you wait, it's gonna be really good. And for a lot of these people, it's so fraught because their attitude towards it is so toxic from having grown up in this purity culture that they end up having, like, a lot of, sexual difficulties or whatever. Yeah, like Useless Strawberry says, sex must be so built up in their heads. And that's a huge thing. So they get really neurotic about it, and it doesn't lead to, like, satisfying, pleasurable experiences. Purity culture fostered the prosperity gospel in the hearts and minds of young people, which told them that as long as they followed God's plan for sexuality, they would be blessed. Purity culture failed to teach us proper and comprehensive sexual education. Purity culture called young people dirty and used if they had multiple partners. dated around, had sex before marriage, or even kissed people. Metaphors included comparing girls to chewed up pieces of gum and roses without petals, propagating shame. So these are good points about why this is toxic. The lack of quality sex education, which is still a problem in our country to this day. People and health education too. I talk about, hold on, I'm going to fix my, talked about this much, but girls are not taught about how our bodies work. Like there's so many things I'm still finding out about my reproductive system. I'm 40 years old. And yeah, this idea about being dirty and used up. Purity culture is harmful to both women and men. Purity culture does not teach proper and comprehensive sexual education. It centers around abstinence. It doesn't prepare young adults for when they will eventually have sex, whether that is within the confines of marriage or not. Purity culture does not encourage the use of contraceptives, birth control, or safe sexual practices. In fact, those who make a commitment to abstinence are more likely to get pregnant out of wedlock. Useless says, I was told we girls were like apples. In a study done by Anthony Paik, a sociologist at the University of Massachusetts, he discovered that those who make abstinence pledges are more likely to contract HPV and become pregnant before marriage. That is very interesting and very significant. Like, whoa, you're more likely to get an STD that could lead to cancer and get pregnant. He explains this in part through the phenomenon of cultural lag, the idea that people might reject certain values faster than they update the action supporting those values. In this case, the pledge breakers abandon the idea that they should be virgins until marriage, but unlike people who never made the pledges, they didn't use birth control and condoms, Paik theorized. Many sex ed programs and cultures that promote abstinence only until marriage also teach that contraceptives are ineffective. I think it was pitched to a lot of us this way. Expired Milk says sex with men was pitched to me as something to endure/survive rather than something to enjoy. I still pretty much agree. Still remains on my list of top 10 worst things that could realistically happen to me. I think that's always been like a trope or whatever that we've been exposed to, that like women don't enjoy it, women hate it. You know, that it's like inherently unenjoyable for women. Probably has more to do with men than anything that's inherent in women. But yeah, that idea. I always felt that way about marriage. Even growing up, I was like, oh God, marriage is going to be, independent of sex. Like I wasn't even really thinking about that aspect of it, but like marriage is going to be this thing that I'm going to have to do someday and I don't want to. And like also having a child, like I was like, please no. Like I didn't realize that you could actually have an option about that, you know? However, those who are genuinely serious and devout about keeping their pledge may succeed, the article explains. Purity culture ultimately encourages shame. Women are especially to be ashamed of any sexual experiences, whether consensual or not. They are told they are dirty and tainted if they are raped or abused, or if they engage in any sexual activities, including kissing before marriage. They are given labels. If they sin sexually, they are seen as giving themselves away. This message of sex making you dirty is especially difficult if someone who has grown up in a purity culture gets married They may struggle with feelings of being dirty or used because they have been taught that sex is bad, and now they have to retrain their brain to believe sex is good within the context of marriage. Oh, great point, T dot. ROFL, the stereotype is here to hide men's sexual inadequacies. There you go. Moon says, I also didn't think women enjoyed sex until my early 20s. I talked about that in a stream with. Okay, moving on. Where was I? I'm just going to start up here. I don't remember. Purity culture ultimately encourages shame. Women are especially to be ashamed of any sexual experiences, whether consensual or not. They are told they are dirty and tainted if raped or abused. Yeah, it's awful. If they sin sexually, they are seen as giving themselves away. This message of sex making you dirty is especially difficult if someone who has grown up in a purity culture gets married. Yes, this is what I was talking about, how I read this book about this guy who waited until marriage thinking like it's going to be the greatest gift ever. And then he could never get over the fact that he felt so dirty and ashamed of having sex. And this was from a man's perspective, and it was very enlightening. And it was a great book, actually. Wish I could recommend it to you. But, once in a while, like it's worthwhile to read something written by a Moid. But yeah, this is for sure true. Sure, if you drill this into people that this is a dirty, shameful, sinful thing, when they get married, those feelings and thoughts are not going to just magically vaporize now that they're married. That's deep, like for real, especially if you're teaching them that from a young age. They may struggle with feelings of being dirty or used because they have been taught that sex is bad and now have to retrain their brain to believe sex is good within the context of marriage. Joanna Sawatsky, Rebecca Gregoire Lindenbach, and Sheila Ray Gregoire write in their book, The Great Sex Rescue, The Lies You've Been Taught and How to Recover What God Intended. Evangelical culture primes women to repress their sexuality, but turns around everything and chastises them when they are married for doing that very thing. Oh, chewed up piece of gum. Similarly, purity culture can actually create physical problems and pain during sex. The body can and will react physically to psychological issues. One example of this is vaginismus, an automatic tightening of the pelvic floor muscles in the event of penetration. A possible explanation of this condition can be explained by the constant teachings to withhold sexual feelings or urges and the immense shame felt if those feelings are acted upon. Another example of how purity culture affects pelvic health is people in today's age commonly experiencing dyspareunia. This term means painful intercourse occurring before, during, or after intercourse. Again, this is often stemming from shame and suppression of sexual desires. Ballistic says, I find it hard not to feel negatively about religious women in general, especially Christians. Why follow an ideology that hates you? What do you all in the chat think about that? Lil Meow says, indoctrination is how it happens. I know what you mean. I feel more like compassionate for them in that they have been indoctrinated, and it's just like brainwashing culture that they that results in them following this. Yeah, they end up hating themselves, they pass it on to their daughters, they don't think, it's like cult-like type stuff. KP says Abrahamic religions need to be eradicated. Useless says, I feel sorry for female cult members. At the same time, I want them to snap out of it and see things in plain sight. It's really hard. Like the things that we talk about and the reality that we talk about and the way the world is and the way men are and the way things really are for women, it's really painful. I feel like there's an Andrea Dworkin quote about that, but like it's so much easier to live as a normie, right? And not like see this stuff. This is painful. You're asking a woman to see the pain in the world that she is a part of. It's asking a lot. I don't know how we've all done it. Lily says, I have compassion for those women, but I'm also very on guard around them. They'll be the first people to take away your rights, my sister. Oops. Comrade Scar says, for me, I get religious people because I grew up that way, but it makes me easily frustrated with them. Hazel says, especially some of these cults, very little media, homeschooled. If you're raised this way with little outside world input, it's easy to fall in deep. Expired Milk says religious indoctrination is scary, but I often feel more frustrated that with secular indoctrination also serving male dominance is often said to not exist. At least people acknowledge religious cons. Very good point. Very good point. We are even in the secular world, we're indoctrinated with very similar messages, maybe like a little different version, right? Maybe not so extreme and on the surface so insane, but more insidious. Like I shared that video of the mom putting makeup on her daughter and her daughter doing the daughter was doing the mom's makeup, right? I don't know if you guys saw that. I shared it in my community post. Just something I'm flipping through the shorts and I see this video and I'm just like mind blown, right? And then you go to the comments, like you expect there even to be one comment being like, what the hell is this? This girl is 4 years old. Why does she have fake eyelashes on a 4-year-old? Kill me. Right? Moon says, I saw the vid, awful stuff. None of the comments are critical. All of the comments are, Mama, you're raising your daughter right. Mama, this is how you raise a daughter right. Yeah, you go, girls. This is the secular indoctrination. And no one's critical. Like these are the same people who could be like, yeah, purity culture. Wow, that's insane. How dare we do that to young women? Oh, Mama, you're raising your daughter right. Whoa. Maybe heavily moderated. I left a critical comment. I was like, this is really messed up. Vaginismus can result from abuse, fear, and shame that has surrounded sexual behavior, making sex difficult and painful for women, even within the context of marriage. So even when you want to enjoy it, you can't. Additionally, Sheila Ray Gregoire shares on her website, in our research of over 20,000 women, we found that certain evangelical teachings about sex lead to statistically significant decreases in women's overall marital and sexual satisfaction. So there you go. In fact, we found that some beliefs can even increase rates of primary sexual pain not related to childbirth. One thing is clear, messages of purity culture do not end when marriage begins. In fact, they remain rooted deep into the hearer's mind years later. We're almost done here. Hazel says, perform for the male gaze at 5, babe, slay queen. Literally. Wicked Queen, great comment. It's also frustrating how women's sexuality is approached only from two extremes. Either we're pushed to be very chaste and modest to save yourself for men, or to be very sexy and wanton to cater to men, or maybe you have to be both at the same time. That's the real challenge. Lastly, purity culture perpetuates misogyny. This is the part y'all came for. It tells young girls and women that first their father needs to own their purity and then they need to give it to their husband. It tells young girls that they are responsible for the purity of men and that their bodies are stumbling blocks, making women the sexual gatekeepers and telling men that they just can't help themselves not only drives home the point that women's sexuality is unnatural, but also sets up a disturbing dynamic in which women are expected to be responsible for men's sexual behavior. I have to unlearn the message that men will always be looking at me and objectifying my body. And I have also had to understand that it truly does not matter what I am wearing if someone is genuinely perverted. So I kind of disagree with the first part of this and agree with the second part. I've had to unlearn the message that men will always be looking at me and objectifying my body. You don't have to unlearn that because that is factually true. But it truly does not matter what I am wearing if someone is genuinely perverted. In other words, if they have the Y chromosome. It is interesting to note that male leaders who were proponents of the purity movement were sexually abusive and unfaithful to their wives. Purity culture teaches young women that they can't say no in marriage because they owe their husbands something. If they are married, they are their husband's only sexual outlet. As Doug Wilson recently said, wives are the only lawful sexual outlet. This is common teaching in the evangelical world that the wife is the only proper place to put your lusts. So every man's battle teaches women that when he quits porn, you need to provide all the sexual release he needs so he doesn't sin. You become methadone for him in this mindset. Him using his wife prevents sin. She is the rape sponge. She is the porn sponge so that he does not sin, which is this paragraph is gross, really bad. Women are responsible for both preventing men's lust and simultaneously giving them what they need, even at their own expense. This can additionally propagate marital R-word. Sheila and her husband Keith are passionate about helping men and women recover from the harmful messages evangelical culture has taught us about sex. Okay, so we've reached the end. What a deep dive. 2 paragraphs left. I'm going to finish it up and then we can all talk. I want to make the note here that often the people who teach us purity culture do not always have malicious intentions. My parents did their best to raise me, and I love them. However, some of the messages they taught me were harmful. Purity culture is harmful by the people who have preached it to us, but the people who have preached it to us are not necessarily evil. They may have even been taught these harmful messages themselves. Purity culture is very detrimental, especially to young girls and women. I want to encourage you that you are not chewed up gum. You are not a torn apart rose without petals. You are beautiful and whole no matter what. If purity culture is still affecting your life and your thoughts, I encourage you to reach out to someone trustworthy. Purity culture is something that can take years to recover from. We have to unlearn the harmful messages it has taught us. I think this was a really excellent blog post, deep dive. Great. And I think her message is just overall excellent. Whew, now I rest my voice a little bit. My nose is itchy. Did you guys like that post? Radical says very good. Oh, yes. Don't get me started on Jordan Peterson. There are women in this very community who shill for that guy, which is wild. Thank you for listening. Thank you all for going on this deep dive with me. Thank you again to Melissa Dawson, who suggested this topic. I welcome you all to, hold on, I gotta take my shirt off. I'm like boiling down here. I welcome you all to make suggestions of any topic that's sort of woman centered or woman adjacent that you're interested in hearing about. Hi. Yeah, I'm very happy to accommodate to the extent that I can. Expired Milk says, very good article. Let's decompress with the group watch of Finding Nemo. I've never seen that movie. Women are the dragons of chaos. I mean, that's sounds kind of cool, actually. I've never seen Finding Nemo. Oh, this is a good topic I will write down. Oh, I wanted to kind of an adjacent topic. I have some things like, our little after party here. Actually, so I was on Radical's channel on Tuesday, and I'm just going to write this down. Toxic ingredients in period products. I actually love that idea for a let us know how you really feel, Zay. So I was on Radical's channel on Tuesday, and she and I had a great talk on her channel, and then we had a great talk after the stream, and I was like, damn, I wish we were recording this because this was like the real shit. But what was the point in bringing that up? I don't know what we were talking about. What were we talking about, Radical? We were talking about Jonah Hill. I don't even remember. Just different stuff. Okay, whatever. Yeah, we always have a great, yes. So this is like our little after party after the stream. Lily is making mocktails. What are we serving for the after party? Okay, so one topic I wanted to talk to y'all about, if you had any opinions about it, is something called Opill. Have you heard of this? It is the over-the-counter birth control pill that's going to be available in early 2024 in the United States. No prescription. It's a progesterone only pill, and you don't need a prescription. Birth control that you can get over the counter for the first time. This pill specifically has been on the market for 50 years. It's hormonal birth control. And yes, it's progesterone only, not estrogen, which is a little safer in that it's like less associated. In fact, I think it's not associated with blood clots and strokes at all the way estrogen birth control is. And I don't know, I have sort of like mixed feelings about it. I think that women should totally have access to that, but I do think that birth control is given out very sort of cavalierly, and that it's not necessarily like taken as seriously as it should be. Ooh, interesting, Hazel. I wonder if any of the lobbying has come from trans people thinking that, yeah, there's definitely, actually, I was getting into it on Reddit a little bit with somebody. I got a lot of upvotes for my opinion that trans treatments are not the same as birth control or abortion or anything. That a lot of people say, oh, it's bodily autonomy, bodily autonomy. I'm like, bodily autonomy is limited in the way that free speech is limited. You can't just like do whatever you want with your body, you know? Oh, I'm glad you, whoops, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Zay Zay, sorry, I'm like, chat's going too quick. Yeah. So that's an interesting idea, that rolling that out. Yeah, for a long time, the trans TRAs have been trying to kind of co-opt this idea of bodily autonomy that we apply to birth control and abortion to trans stuff. Comrade Scar says, I mix on it because birth control can cause sex to be painful and give women mental illnesses and make them suffer in non-deadly ways. I agree. It's a really mixed bag. My experiences with it were really, really bad. So that's where, you know, and again, N equals 1. Not everybody has a terrible experience. Some people like love it, swear by it. Personally, my experience was awful with it. So and no one warned me, right? They just gave it to me. Like, this is the least harmful thing ever. I was on Depo-Provera for 2 years, which is like the maximum amount of time you're supposed to ever be on it for. But I didn't get my period back normally for another year after I stopped using it. And I never had ovarian cysts. I didn't have PCOS until after I used Depo-Provera. I've always wanted to do a video and call it, did Depo-Provera ruin my health? The answer is I don't know. But in my life, the period before I used it, I was very healthy. The period after I used it, I was very unhealthy and still remain to this day. Have a lot of chronic health issues that I didn't have before. And it could just be totally coincidental. I accept that it could be a coincidence. Maybe it's not. And I don't know. That's where you need really widespread long-term research to see if there are any correlations. But I know for me personally, I had very normal periods before. After, I've had so many ovarian cysts that ruptured, like just horrible. Never had that before. The other thing is, after I got diagnosed with PCOS and I was having these cysts that were rupturing and like sending me to the ER to get on morphine and all this stuff, I had a male gynecologist, and he said, take birth control pills. And I said, okay. And he prescribed something called Vianva, which was estrogen and progesterone synthetic. And I took it for 3 weeks, the amount of active pills. I was like, I'm going to stick this out, because a lot of people say, oh, it starts off really horrible, but if you can stick it out, it will get better over months or whatever. In 3 weeks, I went to the emergency room 4 times for panic attacks. I have never been to the emergency room for a panic attack before, and I have never been to the emergency room for a panic attack since. But in the 3 weeks I was on that hormonal estrogen, I went to the ER 4 times for panic attacks. So that was awful. I felt totally out of control mentally. You know, it's so funny. We talk about like the trans stuff all the time. Do we talk about the mental aspect of messing with your sex hormones, and especially men who take synthetic estrogen? I know my experience taking synthetic estrogen was, it was a totally different person. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible experience. I mean, I really thought I'm going to die. So, you know, to the extent that we sort of like make fun of these trans males and stuff for acting so out there and kooky and like out of control mentally, look at what hormones can potentially do for someone. So Moon says, only been on NuvaRing for 1 month in 2013 and never again since I don't have sex. That's a nice thing about that. Um, again, we were talking about the benefits of abstinence and stuff like that. Well, and these are things you don't have to worry about as much. Although, again, women get prescribed hormones for um, like ovarian cysts. Really one of the only that's pretty much the only thing they can do for it, because every time you ovulate, you have the potential to create a cyst on your ovary, and some people are really prone to getting them. And so the only way to prevent that is to prevent ovulation. The only way that they know to do that, besides removing your ovaries, is taking hormones. So, yeah. Whew, that got me fired up talking about that. Lil Meow says the endocrine system is delicate. Messing with it can screw you up bad. And yet, I think even, oh God, expired milk. It was suggested to me I stop my period because guys on tour buses don't like seeing period products in the trash. That's insane. As if it's like a little inconvenience to them, then you have to change your whole body around for them. Moon says best birth control for me was hearing how awful the sex my friends were having with their boyfriends. Yeah. And I don't begrudge any women who use birth control for their painful periods or anything like that. And I love to hear that they've had success with it, just because my experience is very N equals 1. I know that. And I know there are women who are like, have had really good experiences with it. So I don't want to say like, oh, I had a terrible experience with it. Don't do it because it didn't work for me. These things are all, as far as I know, I mean, they've been around forever now at this point, and they do help some women. So if you have something like endometriosis or things, I mean, obviously talk to your doctor and stuff, but it may be worth at least trying, because you can always get off of it. I mean, that's the thing. I took that for 1 month, which was 3 weeks, and it was really not working for me, so I stopped. And they've said, oh, there's other ones. There's ones that are super low dose, like low estrogen and stuff like that. This O pill that is coming on the market, like I said, it's progestin only. So that doesn't carry a lot of the risks that the others do. And, like I said, Depo-Provera, I think maybe messed me up in some ways physically. There were things that I noticed right away on it. Like I literally within a week of being on Depo-Provera, I had really bad acne. My skin like totally cleared up and never got bad again. So I've really never had acne since then. It cleared up my skin kind of once and for all. This is like my late 20s. All throughout my 20s, I had acne. Totally cleared up my skin. So that was a positive, and also good mood booster, really. But I also got like fat on my back, and I had never had fat on my back before, and it took forever for it to go away. Literally probably 10 years. And I don't know. I really don't have back fat anymore. But literally within a week, I was super lean, never had fat on my back, and I had back fat 1 week into using Depo-Provera. So Lil Meow says PCOS has put me through the ringer in all ways. I'm interested in hearing more about that. And do you do anything for it? I talked about this, I think, last week or recently, that I went to the doctor for my physical, and she said, oh, it was my first time at the doctor, and she said, oh, I see you have PCOS in your chart. And she was like, you can't possibly have PCOS. You're not overweight. And I was like, okay, whatever. But yeah, do you eat like a low sugar diet? That's something I probably really need to do. I don't know if my health issues are from PCOS or whatever. I have Hashimoto's too. I tend to attribute like any kind of flare up and feeling like garbage to Hashimoto's. Um, yes, metformin. I was literally just talking to my mom about this today. I I think that's one of the only things that they do for PCOS is besides birth control is metformin, but I've heard that it can have pretty like intense side effects, like mess up your digestion. I already have literally the world's worst digestion. Not the worst. I don't want to like jinx myself, but not great. So that freaks me out. Um Lil Meow says, when I eat high protein, low sugar, it's way better. I eat sugar, so I should maybe probably try to work on that. But yes. Oh, diet is, it's so crazy too. And I went to the doctor and I was like, and I said, I don't feel healthy day to day. And I have a lot of digestive issues and all this stuff. I had a lot of issues with my digestion. She never once said anything about what's your diet like, or maybe you should change your diet, or maybe you should go to, a dietitian or something. It was literally like, I have some pills I can give you. It was like, oh, but doctors just aren't clued in to diet. Yes, IBS crew. Hello. Much more likely to affect women, by the way. Hugo says, answer my question on Over It, please. Why am I still banned on Over It, even though I'm a cis woman who is tired of misogyny? But I said that I'm asexual. That's why I got banned. I don't know, man. I'm banned on there too. So, sorry. Diet is crazy important. I agree. I'm working on my diet. I wanted to actually, little side topic. We have a few minutes. We can talk for a few more minutes. Have you guys heard of Girl Dinner? I kind of wanted to talk about this, but I don't know what I really want to say about it. Girl Dinner. Is that something that anyone out there is familiar with? Let me see if I can pull something up here. Let me see. I like literally cannot read another word. My voice is so dead right now. Okay, Girl Dinner. It's a really like cool idea. Let's see. New York Times snack plates that okay, here we go. Oh, okay. So they have actually like little ideas for Girl Dinner on here. This is cute. My internet is so painfully slow. Like it's literally like 1997 where like the photos load like I didn't even know how I'm streaming actually. For some reason we've had an internet issue. Okay, let's see if I can share this. Excuse me. Share. Okay. So Girl Dinner. Yes, they just renamed charcuterie. It's just like a cheese plate, basically. But the idea, I know. As soon as I heard about this, I was like, "Whoa, this is how I eat. This is how I eat." I do not sit and cook a meal. I do like meal prep on the weekend. Usually, when my brother comes over, those of you who've seen like we stream together, but my brother Nigel, man, he is like really he's a good one because he helps me meal prep my food for the week. And I never have, like I've said, my health sucks. I never have energy to like do any meal prep. He'll do like 75% of it for me. Um, I just basically tell them what to make. But yeah, I do some meal prepping and then I just like pick stuff together. And so yeah, I'm like very familiar with this concept of girl dinner, but like the idea of girl dinner is that it's supposed to be like a rebellion against like cooking, slaving over a stove and cooking a giant meal for your husband and kids and stuff. It's like you're just doing it for yourself. You're pulling together things that taste good and like um kind of all the different tastes like sweet, salty, savory, umami, whatever, like that satisfy all those different parts of your taste buds. And it's like kind of filling. Um, and it's just satisfying. It's like just about kind of being like kind to yourself or whatever. But then like I think the funny aspect of it is it's like supposed to be low effort. And then it's like you get stuff like this, which is like this is so heavily styled, you know? Um yeah, anyways. Yes, KP says girl dinner reminds me of when you have nothing to eat, so you're pulling random things out of the fridge that don't typically go together. Um, yeah, it's like little small bites of things. So I think that it can be very healthy. I did see one criticism. I haven't like done a deep dive on this or anything. I did see one criticism where someone was like, "Oh, you all are sharing your girl dinner plates and like they're very light on calories. So make sure you're getting enough food." And I do agree with that. Don't use girl dinner as a trend to mask your eating disorder or something. Like as long as it's sort of I think a good principle with food is like, is it colorful? Is it varied? Different things with different types of nutrients, things with fiber and vitamins and minerals and phytochemicals, a protein. You know, it doesn't have to be like one big meal and one big dish. It can be like lots of little things that all together satisfy those needs. Or say you like just you ate healthy and ate well the rest of the day, then like go ahead, have a little like snacky nosh for dinner. Nothing wrong with that whatsoever. Totally can be part of a healthy diet, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, I think it's like a really cool, it's a good concept. Basement, yeah. Let's see what else. Oh, so they just give a few examples of here. Anyways, what else? Yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have. I've been really like I've been consistent with the streams on Fridays, so I'm like really happy with that. Oh, Nighttime says the food is trying to be feminine. All you need is beef. That's an interesting critique. I guess that could be a critique of girl dinner is that um it's more like feminine coded foods or something. No Discord for my channel, no Discord in the near future. The time to chat with each other is here on the streams for now. So that's what we got. And I try to do community posts on a regular basis. Okay, so this is this a criticism that it's dainty and cute and that therefore it's fulfilling the feminine, or should I say feminine idea of how women are supposed to eat or something instead of being a kind of hearty meal. I think it's kind of good for the summer, summer. Maybe you have like random things from the farmer's market and you just throw it all together. Rather, I know, Radical, that you do like, I know that you do meal prepping too, and you were like one of the people who inspired me to do it. Um, and because I know for me, I just like don't, when I'm hungry, I need to eat immediately. I'm like, I get hungry, and what I'm going to spend an hour making a meal? Like, I can't do that, you know? Um, yes, this is it, expired milk. We have our little moment here, 2 weeks, 2 hours a week, and then we all promise to touch a little grass every week. That's the vow that we make to each other in this community, right? We're all grass touchers to one degree or another. Yeah, anyway, speaking of, I have been wanting to make videos. Like I said, I've been very consistent in doing the streams. I'm really happy about that. I really enjoy what, I don't know why I still have this up here. I really enjoy the Friday streams, but I want to make videos, and I don't know what is preventing me from doing that besides like perfectionism or whatever, anxiety. I have no idea. I seem to prioritize everything else in my life ahead of making videos. I'm not like I'm not setting aside time in my day to do it. And I have ideas. I have even like written a full essay, and I just need to turn it into a video. And for some reason, I like haven't been able to do that. And it's very frustrating because I want to do that. So I don't know. I'm open to any advice. I'm also open to any topics for streams. At least I'm doing the streams. Tuesday stream, please. Do you mean stream on your channel? I'm like totally happy to do that. I think that would be great. Yeah, I saw the chat sort of died there for a second. It's hot AF here. Grass is scorched. It's been warm here, but I'm not going to complain about the heat, knowing that it's like 100 degrees in other parts of the country. American beauty pageant topic. Okay, beauty pageant. Is that like a specific thing? Or like just beauty pageants in general? That's definitely something we can talk about. Yeah. Pubes is on the like no fly list of topics. I think we did have talked about it though. Ballistic says, I'm eating a homemade mini pizza with hearts of palm and tomatoes right now. That sounds delicious. And Hugo says, I'm in Poland, and I am Polish in the way that American people say I am, from whatever country. I am ethnically Polish, and it's hot, and politics are not so good for women. And yeah, let's see. So I don't know. I'm having trouble wrapping this up. I think Radical and I should definitely get on the Tuesday stream vibe. I feel like the streams are like doable for me mentally right now. Making videos is not like doable for me mentally. Oh, okay, Little Meow. I'm going to take a screenshot of this. That's a good topic. Yeah, for sure. That's a great topic, actually. Collab more, please. We have collabed a ton in the past. Julie likes the Tuesday streams. Yeah, I think it's nice to have like an evening stream. I want to do yoga. I know a few people have expressed interest in that. I'm like inching closer in my mind to do it. I just don't know when I'm going to do it, because really the only good days for me to do it are Friday and Saturday, and I already do the stream on Friday, so that's not happening. Saturday, I usually have been streaming video games with my brother. So maybe we'll do the video games on Sunday and I'll do yoga on Saturday. Yeah. Would Saturday be a good day? I feel like Saturday would be a better day for yoga anyways. So we could do that. I just want to like teach some yoga, and I think it would be fun even if one person shows up. So it's that time. It's that time where I thank you for spending part of your Friday with me. I really appreciate it. Fridays are my favorite day of the week. I look forward to it. This was really fun. Great article today. Expired Milk says live yoga. I'd attempt, but if I stop showing up to streams, assume I've fallen and I can't get up. We'll send somebody to pick you up. Oh, this is a nice comment. That flew. Well, yes, thank you all for your wonderful comments and participating. And it was just a super interesting topic. And yeah, I don't have much else to say. I'll see you in Grandma's basement next week. Again, I don't have a specific article or a topic, so let me know if you've got anything. I have ideas. I got a long list of ideas, but yeah, thank you all. Appreciate it. Now I get to go rest my vocal cords. Oh, it's like a workout every week. All right. Yeah. Hopefully Tuesday. Dude, Radical, our stream last Tuesday, I felt very I was in the flow. So hopefully we'll get to do that again. It's always nice because you always put in the effort of making slides and stuff too, which I love. All right. I'll see y'all. Catch you on the flippity flop. Probably streaming some video games this weekend. Hope to see a few there. Okay. Bye.